Hey guys, what's going on? This is Tanner from TanmanBaseballFan.com. I've got a special episode, I guess if you could call this, in store for you here. Today actually marks the 1 year anniversary of when I sat at this very desk right in this chair telling the world that I was going to quit super collecting Jose Canseco baseball cards. Now I'm still picking up some Canseco cards that are very interesting to me, but everything else, 99% of that collection is long gone. I have sold everything basically, except for the ones that really meant a lot to me. And as I said before, I'm still picking up some that I really like. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about what I've been quietly putting together over the past year. Please sit back and enjoy the tunes of Take Me Out to the Ball Game on my guitar while you see what I've been up to. So, as you can see, it's a whole lot different from Jose Canseco baseball cards, isn't it? I wanted to take a while on this video to go through the cards and tell you a little bit more about them. And I understand that you're not here because you just want to see what I've picked up, right? You want to be educated, you want to be entertained. It's my hope that I'm able to do both of those things for you. So if you have some time, I'd love to have you stick around and check out some more about what I got. And I'll go ahead and dive in right now with some old Judge baseball cards. I also have an article that's been written as well for these. So, and this video is going to be attached to it, and I'll probably link it below. But anyway, so we're going to start off with, like I said, some old Judge baseball cards. So here's one right here. Hopefully you can see it. It's, again, close to 150 years old. And just a really neat card. It's got two players, and I'll tell you a little bit more about old Judge, by the way, is that most of these cards were actually staged inside of a studio. So the majority of the cards, except for the 1887 Brooklyn cards and the rare 1889 California League cards, were all photographed of the players inside a studio. So, which is pretty great because sometimes you'll see some people, some players with their hands cupped like this, looking at the sky, you know, and there's a ball hanging. Well, that ball is actually suspended in the ceiling by a string, and so they're trying to mimic all these neat things as if they're action shots. So here's one, for instance. This is sliding Billy Hamilton. You can see his hands are cupped open like this, ready to receive a baseball that's suspended by a string at the very top. It's a really cool card. Billy Hamilton, by the way, no joke. I mean, he's still like third all time in the stolen base list. He was like literally like the Ricky Henderson of the 19th century, guys. So really great player. But it's interesting to note also that he does not have a glove on. A lot of these players were playing without any gloves. So here's an outside version. This is an 1887 Brooklyn card. You can see that the man is clearly outside. He's ready to catch a ball, and the ball, interestingly enough, is a darker color. And it's probably suspended by trees or something, by a tree branch. This is Harry Stovey. He's got a great story as well, guys. Like, I'm going to stop right there and tell you a little bit about the 19th century baseball. I have been captivated by this for about a year now. Like, I have loved learning about 19th century baseball. There's so many cool things that have happened back then. There are all kinds of like just incredible legends, and stories and superstars that had photography been as big a deal then as it is now, as well as have been like television or anything, I have no doubt in my mind that some of these bigger players would have been just as big as Babe Ruth is today to us. So anyways, going forward, back to Harry Stovey. His real name was actually Harry Stowe. He ended up changing his name because he didn't want his family to know that he was playing baseball. And interestingly enough, this man that you see right here, this baseball player, he was the first player in baseball history to hit 100 home runs. So that's pretty significant. And up until recently, I had never even heard about the guy before. You could tell that this is a little bit of a lighter picture, because that's, old Judge cards are kind of susceptible to that. So I made an exception for him because it's Stovey, for picking him up. But as you can see, my other ones are crisp. They've got crisp, nicely contrasted pictures. I like these. One of them, some of them even have some writing on the back. I don't even care about that. I mean, that's I would much rather that. I appreciate the poor condition marking because of that. Because I would rather have something like that instead of something that's been crumbled up. And so, yeah, it's just, I love them. So here's let me look at what else I have here. Here's a couple others. This is George Gore. His nickname was Piano Legs. By the way, you cannot beat the 19th century nicknames of these baseball players. I guarantee it. Anyway, so this is George Piano Legs Gore. I believe he played with Cap Anson, and I think he actually cleaned house on him one year, beating him in the batting race. So he was no joke of a player. Here's Jim Fogarty. He's getting ready in the studio there to catch a baseball that's suspended by a string also. And I didn't know much about Fogarty, but I've got a periodical from the 19th century, which is kind of a neat, interesting thing. As I was reading, I found out that whoever wrote the article had mentioned that this guy right here, Jim Fogarty, was one of the best all-around baseball players of that time. And the article was from 1882 or something like that. So it was really cool to see that. Last but not least, not really last but not least, there's two other old Judge cards I want to show you. So I'm going to show you this. This is probably one of the most famous old Judge cards. This is a Buck Ewing and the mascot. So Buck Ewing he loved kids. He was very much so a superstitious guy, and he wanted kids around. But the interesting thing about this card is that the kid himself right here, he actually had a bit of a celebrity status himself. He actually had his own cabinet card back then. How cool would that be as an 8-year-old or however old he is there? I have no clue how old he is there, but anyways, it's a really cool pose because it's got this real neat rustic looking chair. I mean, that's just what chairs look like back then. I don't know, but Buck Ewing, Hall of Famer, considered by a lot of people to be one of the best, if not the best, baseball player in the 19th century. I wouldn't call him the best, but I'd certainly call him an easy top 10, maybe top 5. So last but not least, this is probably one of my favorites. And this is probably the only card that I'm going to get graded myself, is this card right here, Billy Sunday. And for those of you who do not know him, he was fast as all get out. One time he ended up winning a game by stealing second, third, and home on successive pitches. How cool is that? But his story is a lot deeper than this. He actually ended up giving up baseball because he wanted to pursue full-time Christian work, and he ended up being this really well-known evangelist. He is, in fact, one of the most popular evangelists in American history. I love his story. There's a baseball book about him as well. And by the way, a lot of these guys in the 19th century, by the way, have a lot of books that have been written about them because they have some fantastic stories behind them. So, but anyways, on top of that, old Judge will typically have for each player between maybe 5 or 10 poses. So each player might have literally 5 or 10 different cards in the set. And let me tell you all about the set, by the way. It is massive. It has got 500 and something players that's featured, and over 2,500 different cards so far. So it's a monster and virtually impossible to complete. I mean, you look at the Pop Report and PSA, there are very few of them that actually have double digits as far as submissions go in these. So they're all pretty hard to find. You can find any you can pretty much find any type of generic Old Judge card on eBay at any given time. There's probably 100 or something out there right now as it is, but to find specific players, that's where it gets really tricky. So going forward, oh, and by the way, I want to show you this too, this 2-player card one more time. The cool thing is like they would use props like that base there. That literally might be a pillow. So it's really cool. It's just there's some great stories on these cards. And the Old Judge cards, by the way, I believe I'm going to try to say this right. I don't know if I have it fully, if I've got all of the words right here or not. But I believe they were developed on what's called albumen paper. Now, what that is that's actually paper that's coated in egg whites. So that way the photography would actually stick on the paper itself. And it's so thin and brittle, they would actually glue that onto cardboard backing, cut them up, and then put them in cigarette boxes. And to take that a little further even, and I'll go ahead and show you another picture of this here so you can get an idea. So the way that they created these cards, by the way, is they would take cabinet-sized photos, Old Judge would, of wherever they got the pictures from, right, and had the rights to them. They would take cabinet-sized versions of them. They would cut them down into the right perspective of what a cigarette card was. I mean, this is one of the first ones, so I guess they were probably standard to do this, right? But what they would do is they would put it in like a 24 photograph matrix. So you imagine like this thing like this. Like just this big rectangle, and you have the photographs. Bam, 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 bam. So it's all there, right? And after they did that, they would take these little labels, for instance, like where it says Old Judge Cigarettes right here, and Goodwin & Co. at the bottom in the name. These would actually literally be pasted or stuck right on top of the photographs, okay? So basically what you have is you have this 24 image matrix that's just like, let me try to get it on camera here. It's like this. And you have all the pictures, all the labels on top of the pictures, and then they would take a camera and step back and they would photograph that actual matrix. Now, that would come out to be, I think, like an 8x10 or something like that, right? So you have 24 of these cards on one thing, where then they would take that and they would glue that on cardboard, chop them up, and then put them in cigarette packs. So in other words, if they wanted to have like several of these cards that were made, they would take that picture most likely 10, 20, 30, 50 times, and those were the doubles. That's how they created them. I'm going to give a shout out about this book as well. This is an outstanding book, guys. And it is called The Photographic Baseball Cards of Goodwin & Company, 1886 to 1890. Fantastic book, y'all. It talks about like almost all of the cards in the set. It's got it's great history reference. I just love it. So anyways, just want to give a shout out to those guys that are that have written this. They've done a great job. So anyways, so that's all for the Old Judge cards. I want to go next to let me go for this. I'm really excited about this. Y'all have probably seen me post a set of non-baseball 1887, 1888 Allen Ginter cards. Well, here's the baseball set. How cool is that? Very cool. So they're all graded a 1, but take a look. The fronts look packed fresh. They're so cool. And I mean, I'm holding an authentic baseball card of Mike King Kelly, the $10,000 beauty. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. I have. I mean, this is like one of the guys that was probably the most popular between him and Cap Anson. These were the two biggest superstars, the first two superstars ever in baseball history, professional baseball history. Other guys can bring up some other names or whatever, but I don't think anybody got bigger than Cap Anson and Mike King Kelly. So it's fantastic to have both those cards in the set. This, by the way, is probably the most popular 19th century baseball card just in the general public, which is really cool as well. Books have been written about these guys. For Cap Anson, or for Mike Kelly, there's America's first pop hit was written about him. It's called Slide Kelly Slide. There's so much history in this. And the neat thing about Allen and Ginter is that the production of this is so wildly different today from when these were created. These are actually made by handmade tools, basically. So in other words, like an original print of like a Rembrandt or a Picasso that hangs in a museum, this is every bit as original. So how cool is that? Let that set in for a little bit and think about that. It's really neat. It's not just something that somebody put on the Topps press or something and pushed a button and printed them all out by the millions, or my inkjet printer or anything like that. This is really an original piece of art right here. It's really neat, and that's kind of what sets apart the 19th century baseball cards from all the others. So to quickly go through the rest of the set: Captain Jack Glasscock, Sir Timothy Keefe, one of the best pitchers of the 19th century. Charles Comiskey, I'm sure you've heard of him. He played a massive part in forming the American League. Charles Bennett, he ended up, I believe he ended up losing his legs, and I think Detroit named their stadium after him shortly thereafter, because he was a good player, very good player. Bob Carruthers. And all these guys, by the way, I mean, they have incredible stories. I mean, it's just so fascinating. Like, you could get lost in like reading about these guys. It's so neat. Anyways, this is John Ward. He was credited by some to helping develop the first curveball. There's been speculation that there are other people have done it as well. Like Candy Cummings is the front runner. So I don't know if it means that he was like the first one to develop the first overhand curveball or what. I'm not sure exactly what happened back then. But like up until 1884, baseball was still played by pitching underhand. So you think about it, this is just like 3 years after, so that's crazy. John Clarkson, I don't remember his story. I think he might have been with Bennett at the time that he lost his legs, perhaps. And then last but not least, Joseph Mulvey. I think he ended up getting shot within his first 2 or 3 games with like was it Detroit or something? I don't remember, but it was a wild story. Like I said, crazy story after crazy story after crazy story. So, going back to Old Judge, with the makers of Old Judge's Goodwin, they came out with 1888 Goodwin Champions. I feel like this is probably the reason why they did this is because they didn't want to be outdone by the beautiful artwork of Allen and Ginter. I mean, man, guys, this is really cool stuff because it's so cool that Topps decided to come back out with it well over 100 years later in 2006, and they still use almost the same artwork. It doesn't really change that much from year to year. From 2006 all the way up to now, 2019, they're still pumping that same design out basically, and collectors are eating it up. So think about that. I think this, by the way, is like the first nationally distributed color baseball card set or something like that. So it holds a huge piece of significance in our hobby as a set and just as singles. So if you ever get a chance, pick some up. They're gorgeous. I mean, they're really neat. And it's also awesome to have like the genuine article. So anyways, not to be outdone by Allen & Ginter, Goodwin came up with 1888 Goodwin Champions. This is probably in the front running as well with the other Cap Anson as like the most popular 19th century baseball card ever. This is of Mike King Kelly. The artwork is beautiful. Like you see the clouds and and just the color in the background. You have him with his mustache there. At the bottom it says Old Judge and Gypsy Queen cigarettes. It's such a beautiful, beautiful card. I'm not really sure why it got an authentic, but I mean, I'd much rather an authentic, which means it's probably altered, than one that's in poor condition with all kinds of wrinkles all over it. So this is a beautiful card. I love this tons. This is a great card. And by the way, the production of this is probably about the same. So we're looking at another handmade original piece of art here as well, which is really cool. So the question now is like, where did the hobby go? Where did the baseball cards go? Because from 1890 to like over 20 years, like when T206s and some other candy cards start coming out, a lot of people wonder, why have there not been any other baseball cards that have been printed between this time? Well, I'll tell you why. It's a very interesting story. So the reason why is because something called the ATC formed. It's the American Tobacco Company. And what happened was this is formed for all of those tobacco companies in America to join together. And so what happens when you join together like that? You don't have to advertise anymore, right? So if you don't have to advertise, why are you going to make baseball cards? It doesn't matter anymore. So they stopped. And a lot of the owners really liked this. They loved that idea because the production of those baseball cards cost them so much. They go, man, this is nuts. We just want this to stop. So the ATC forms. Everybody's excited about it. They're super happy, except for the kids. The kids didn't like it because the kids were wild about these cards. And by the way, y'all, back then in the 19th century, first of all, you think that like the 1980s was the baseball boom? No, the 1880s was the baseball boom. That was the first baseball boom. Kids were wild about these cards. They loved them, and they actually ended up taking up smoking. Like there are advertisements of these children that are smoking as well. It's really a bizarre time period. It's really cool. That's what makes it so interesting to me, is all these other different things. It's like another planet or something. So because there was so little that had happened as far as baseball card production goes during that time, there aren't many things to choose from, except for 1895 Mayo's cut plug. I don't even know if I'm really pronouncing that right. I think it's Mayo. I'm not sure, maybe Mayo. But anyways, here's one of them. You might recognize, I think some football card sets came out like this to reproduce them. Beautiful black card, gorgeous photography. And you see the black borders here. I mean, people complain about 1985 Donruss, 1971 Topps. Cut plug from 1895, baby. That's the one that had the problems, because that's black. Not only that, but the back is black as well. So in your face, 71 Topps. In your face, 85 Donruss. This is the genuine article here. So, but let me talk about this player, because there's a reason why I have this player as opposed to somebody else. This is Dan Bruthers. His nickname was Big Dan. He was 6'2", I think 207 pounds. And when you think of somebody that's 6'2", you might go, well, wait a second, that's not really big. I have a little interesting tidbit for you here. And I don't know if you're going to get a kick out of this as much as I do, but I got an insane amount of interest about this whenever I researched it. Because I was wondering, I said, why is he considered Big Dan at 6'2"? I looked up statistics back in the 19th century, around the time when this was created. The average height of a man was under 5'6" back then. Can you imagine that was the average? So of course, 6'2", this guy's standing over a half foot taller than pretty much everybody else there. Pretty crazy. Something else about Dan Bruthers here. A couple other things here. Number one, he was considered baseball's first slugger. So there's something to be said about that. He's a pioneer in our national pastime here for sure. Up until this past year, I had never heard of the guy before, which is insane. How do I not know who one of these pioneers are? Just like Harry Stovey, how do I not know who these people are? But we're all about Mike Trout and Ken Griffey Jr. and all of them nowadays. But anyways, yeah, Ken Griffey Jr. by the way, he's the legend, the old time legend, great, But and look, I love Griffey, but I mean, man, there are guys that are over 100 years older than him. Doing crazy things in the game. So anyway, Dan Bruthers, one of them. Before he went into Major League Baseball, he played a game in like the minors or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. He ended up rounding third, coming home, and he had a collision with the catcher, knocked the catcher out. The catcher ended up dying. Think about that. This guy killed a guy during baseball, and he was apparently really torn up about it. Of course, I mean, who wouldn't be? But it wasn't something that he just kind of stuck his chest out and ha ha ha, look. It sounds like he was really, really concerned. But anyways, that's a death in baseball. And that happened like in the 1880s, I think, or something. So just another interesting tidbit. So very, very interesting stuff here. So as I said, that for a little over 20 years, it was just radio silent for the most part as far as baseball cards go. So what happened? T205 cards, T206 cards, all kinds of others start coming out at the end of the first decade in the 20th century. So what happened? Why is that? Well, the government stepped in and broke up the ATC, the American Tobacco Company. They said it's too much of a monopoly or something. They said, nope, gotta split up and do your own thing, and we will not have a monopoly here. Okay, well, guess what, guys? Baseball cards are back. And the neat thing was we were given like one of the greatest baseball card sets of all time, especially when you count the Honest Wagner, because that's where the T206 Wagner comes from. Before I get into the T206s, I want to tell you about this T205 here. Christy Mathewson. I love T205 Gold Borders. It's my only one I have right now, at least. Christy Mathewson, his nickname was the Christian Gentleman. Like Billy Sunday, he refused to play on baseball on Sundays. He was a Christian, obviously, because of his nickname. He also was into clean living. He was probably what you would consider more of a Mike Trout type of player, that everybody liked him. He was clean cut. Everybody really enjoyed him. He was a very good-looking, intelligent, bright guy. So I just had to get this card. This is my favorite T205 in the whole set. It's Christy Mathewson. I love his bangs kind of hanging over his forehead there with his little hat and everything. I just love it. So I'll go ahead and follow that up with T206 Christy Mathewson. Maddie has 3 different T206 cards, I believe. There's the dark hat, the white hat, which doesn't have the NY on the sleeve, and the portrait. So this is my favorite by far, and that's why I picked this one up. It's got the nice, beautiful blue background with the green behind him as well. It's got the NY, it's got the dark hat. It also has his bangs again and everything, which is pretty cool. This is one of my favorite T206 cards. I really enjoy this card. And by the way, guys, like these T206s, they're works of art. I mean, they weren't made by hand in handmade tools like the Goodwins and the Allen and Ginners, but because dot matrix printing and all that stuff started coming out later on, so it's not the same type of printing that's nowadays. I don't think, but it's wildly different from how these were created. So, but they're still so beautiful. It's like a little tiny Mona Lisa or something, So really cool stuff. Going forward with these, I want to show off a couple other Hall of Famers before I do any of these others here. So Huey Jennings, he was not a prominent Hall of Famer, but he is a Hall of Famer. I really like him mainly just because of his personality. Like he was wild, and this card captures his enthusiasm for the game, and so I really appreciate that. The orange in the background, yellow orange in the background and everything is really cool. Wee Willie Keeler, just a monster of a player, another Hall of Famer. I picked this up also just because I really love how it looks. I think they did a great job on the design. So now for the massive guys. Cy Young. Very cool card. So neat thing about Cy Young, which is interesting, is they actually started him, according to what I heard anyways, his real name is Denson True Young. His nickname Cy came because people would call him Cyrus because they thought he was some country bumpkin or something. Well, he had some special stuff on the mound, and so when people took note of that, they said, shouldn't be Cy for Cyrus, it should be Cy for Cyclone, which is pretty cool how to turn that thing around. So good on you, Cy Young. I mean, heck, the guy's got like the most prestigious award in pitching named after him, so there's something to be said for that. So Walter Johnson, Big Train. In my article, I wrote something about what Ty Cobb said about him. Ty Cobb thought this guy was a beast, and he was. I mean, a lot of people in many top pitching history records or whatever, people are going to call Walter Johnson as like the best pitcher in baseball. By the way, it's got a polar bear back, which is really cool. So I really like that. But anyways, he was a monster, and you definitely look him up if you don't know much about him. So got a couple of them here of the same player. Napoleon Lajoie, and at first I thought his name was La Joie or La Joie or La Joie. He was the Frenchman. He very underrated player. He was a player manager for a while. Cleveland loved him so much they changed the team name after him. So it wasn't the Cleveland Spiders anymore. It was the Cleveland Naps for Napoleon. Players like Cy Young and Shoeless Joe Jackson even played on that team when it was named the Cleveland Naps. The managing portion was to the detriment of his career, though. He would have done a lot better had he not managed. He even said that was the worst decision he made in his career. But Napoleon Lajoie is, in my opinion, a very underrated player. He was fantastic. I mean, everybody knows that he was a great player. But anyways, there's a couple of them here. This right here is my favorite of his out of everything in the T206 set. I just love how it looks. Maybe it's the hair. I don't know. Maybe I just like cool hair on baseball players. I don't know. But anyways, last but not least for T206s, Ty Cobb. So this is a big daddy, obviously. It's beautiful, beautiful colors. It's my favorite Cobb in the set. It's not the most desirable. So the most desirable one is going to be the green background portrait that everybody goes wild over. I think it's because it's rare or something, but never really knew why people would go after that more over this one, because I think this one just beats it hands down as far as looks go. So that's all the T206s, and I'm going to go ahead and stay on this this T206 kick here, or tobacco card kick, I guess. This is a T202 Hassan triple folder. Really cool, because what they would do in the past is they would actually take the two side cards, and this is Huey Jennings, by the way, whoops, right here, and so I showed you a T206 card I had of his, and they would bend them in to fit into the box. The thing that really sold me on this, aside from the fact that Ty Cobb is right here, is this middle picture, guys. This is the most famous action shot in baseball history, and it took place around 1910 or something. I don't know the exact time or date or whatever, so a couple of years before this, because I think this card is from 1912. And it was by Charles Conlon. You've probably heard of Conlon, especially if you're a collector in the 80s and 90s. There was a set called the Conlon Collection. It was black and white, it was glossy, and it featured all of his beautiful photography of these players. It was a gorgeous set, but it didn't really gain a lot of traction because there were no Griffeys or Frank Thomases or anything like that. And there were Barry Bonds or even Canseco, none of those in there. They were old guys that a lot of people just had never heard of. But anyway, so Charles Conlon takes this picture right in the middle. He didn't know that he took it. He was actually talking to the third baseman. So this guy right here, he was just talking, having a nonchalant conversation with him. He looks up, all of a sudden, this guy right here, Ty Cobb, comes in. His teeth are just clenched, and he's got his spikes coming in and everything, and you see all this dust coming up. So he's just going for it, just like Ty Cobb did, And Conlon mentioned that he was really afraid for his friend at third baseman, the third baseman here. He was afraid for his health. He thought he was going to be seriously injured from it. So he goes back home and he goes, "Man, I really wish I took that picture. I just really wish I took that picture. That'd been so cool. I'm going to go ahead and change the plates just in case." Well, guess what? He did take it. He developed it, and to his surprise, this is what came out. And interestingly enough, recently, a Type 1 photo of this just sold for $250,000. I believe that this is the only card that actually utilizes this picture. I could be wrong, but it's the only one that I've seen and that I know of. As a bonus, by the way, if you're interested in these T202 cards, look up the one, I don't remember who's on the card, but in the picture, it's been speculated that Shoeless Joe Jackson is one of the guys that's sliding in on one of the pictures on these here. So this, to me, though, is my favorite card of the entire set. It's the best of the best. It's got Ty Cobb. It's got the best picture. Hands down, this is the winner. So that's why I picked it up. Going forward, this is probably one of my favorite cards that I have, period. Right here. This is a T3 Turkey Red cabinet card of Ty Cobb. This right here might as well be the Mona Lisa to me, guys. I mean, this is an incredible card. You'll see the corners around it. It's got an authentic altered thing there. I mean, it's just got such beautiful coloring. Here's what the back looks like, by the way. Most of them had checklists on the back. It's a gorgeous piece. It's an art piece. In my opinion, it needs to be hanging in a gallery, in an art gallery. I love the different colors in the background, the greens, the oranges, the blues. It's just a neat piece. I really like it. And I've always enjoyed Turkey Reds. I just never thought I'd actually own a real one, especially a Ty Cobb, because he's the best guy in the set. So let's see where I can put this. I also have, okay. Yeah, so this is cool too. So obviously, who's missing in the best of the best for the early 20th century? Honest Wagner. Well, take a look at this. This is an E102 1909 Honest Wagner batting pose. Beautiful, rich red background. It's of him batting. A little bit more of significance as well is that this predates the T06 Wagner most likely. And this is the same year of the famed World Series that Honest Wagner and the Pirates won against Ty Cobb and the Detroit Tigers. Honest Wagner beat the pants off of Ty Cobb in stats, by the way, which is pretty cool. So, got to back that up with one more that I like even better. This. I don't know. This might be my favorite out of all of them. I probably should have left this to the end, but I didn't because I want to go in somewhat chronological order. This is a 1910 Sporting Life I think it's M111, M116 Honest Wagner. Person by the name of Carl Horner. He's a photographer. He took a lot of photographs of baseball players as far as portraits go. Very stoic looking. He took the Honest Wagner portrait photo between 1902 and 1905. It's used on the T206 card. It's used on a couple others. This was one of them. So this is printed around the same time. 1910, 1911 is the T206. The same portrait, exact same portrait. Just the differences are obviously Sporting Life came out with this. It's a hauntingly beautiful card. The background is called the pastel version. It's got some sea green to blue background there. It's a gorgeous card, and I never thought that I would own something like this, but this is a piece I would say that should belong in a museum. It's really neat. I love this card. This is one of my favorites, so super happy about that one. How do I top that though? I mean, it's Honest Wagner. I don't know. I'll go through a few of the others here. So Cracker Jack, 1950. One of them is Napoleon Lajoie, right here. The other is Tris Speaker. His nickname is Where Triples Go to Die. Now, the difference between 1914 and 1915 Cracker Jack cards, by the way, 1915, the backs are upside down. 1914, they're not. The difference between these two is if you look in the Lajoie, and I appreciate this, I truly appreciate this on this card, is you can see a little bit of staining of the caramel from the Cracker Jacks, which is really cool. This one you do not, because this might have been like a redemption of some sort. So it's nice to have one that was like kind of pack pulled, I guess you could say, and then a redemption version. The cool thing is also is this one has some grass in red, and this one just has a stark red background. Tris Speaker, by the way, guys, no joke of a player. He's one of the best. I mean, he's baseball royalty. So, and one of the guys that I never really thought much of. So it's really cool. Let's see what else here. Try to go through the rest of these pretty quickly, just because, first of all, I'm not really as passionate as about the 30s, 40s, and 50s as I am 19th century and early 20th century stuff, but I will go through, and I'll continue to go through these. So, Rogers Hornsby, incredible baseball player. A lot of people really didn't like this guy, though. He was apparently a jerk. This is 1933 Tattoo Orbit. And before I go forward on this, by the way, you notice that I jumped from like 1915 Cracker Jack to like 1933. There's a reason for that. So baseball cards, again, for the most part, stopped largely around that time, 1915 or so, because of World War I, which is kind of neat that you can actually track American history with baseball history. I've really appreciated that a lot as far as what I've been doing reading and everything recently. So it's really cool to think about that. But the 1920s, they had kind of some ugly cards. I mean, a lot of them were all like black and white and nothing like this, really. I mean, there's some strip cards that candy retailers would rip them off. They're like this big and probably made out of paper or something. But 1930s, that's where it's at as far as the art goes. Like, I mean, this is really cool. This is a really cool Rogers Hornsby. I also picked up another one because this is iconic. This is something that can be framed. I mean, I love this artwork. This is Rogers Hornsby again. This has a 1.5 grade on it, so I got it fairly cheap. I mean, I don't know exactly how much I paid. I'd have to look at my notes, but the reason why is because somebody decided to put a D on the back. I'm okay with that. I would much rather pay a lower price of a beautifully presented 1.5 than a lot of money on a 7, because this wouldn't get a 7. This probably get like a 5 or something. maybe a 6 without that writing. I mean, it's nice condition, but I would much rather this with a 1.5 and a D on the back than pay a lot more without that letter. So 1933 DeLong, Jimmy Fox. I've always loved this card type. I think it's very creative. I think it's really neat what they did with it. And Jimmy Fox, I've always been a fan of Jimmy Fox. He was considered the right-hand Babe Ruth. And he actually, a couple of interesting facts for you on Jimmy Fox. First of all, he would have tied Babe Ruth's single season home run record of 60 had 2 of the games that he played that he hit home runs in wouldn't have rained out. So you think about that. He was a very strong player. He was a power hitter, and great player. Like Babe Ruth as well, he was a pitcher, and he was not half bad. He had like a sub-2 ERA, I think, through 9 games or something. But the interesting thing was unlike Babe Ruth, who pitched at the beginning of his career, Jimmy Fox pitched at the end of his career, and it's a very little bit amount of time. So Babe Ruth pitched a lot longer. And going back to Babe Ruth, not going back to Babe Ruth, we haven't talked about Babe Ruth yet. I will talk about Babe Ruth right now because I want to show you a card of his. I have it somewhere here. I'll tell you about his pitching, by the way. You remember when I told you guys that Walter Johnson, probably the best pitcher in baseball history? Babe Ruth, as a pitcher, went head-to-head with him. And in his first 5 or 6 starts or something like that, he beat the pants off of Walter Johnson. You think about that really hard. Babe Ruth, baseball's premier power hitter, baseball's premier player, the name of baseball, the face of baseball. If you ask somebody on the streets if they can name a baseball player, who are they going to say? They're going to say Babe Ruth. They're like, they're not going to say Mike Trout. They're not going to say Griffey. They're not going to say Thomas. They're going to say Babe Ruth. Might say Mickey Mantle, but most often they're going to say Babe Ruth. So it's really crazy to think. I think he went like 5-1 or 6-1 or 5-0 or something against Walter Johnson in pitching. And I mean, that's absolutely insanity to me. Like, can you imagine? I mean, just a dominant player from a pitching perspective as well as a hitting perspective. So, and speaking of Babe Ruth, here you go. This is a 1932 Sanella Margarine card. It's a little bit oversized. It's from Germany, and it's from a very tumultuous time in their country as well. And it's interesting to me that this card was created in Germany and distributed there. That goes to show you how big of a deal Babe Ruth was. Look at the back. See, it talks about stuff that I have no clue because it's in German. This is great, and I've got to give my little bit of endorsement on this card, by the way, guys. If you want a card that's been created of Babe Ruth during his playing career, get the Sanella. It's a beautiful card. It's very cheap, especially compared to the other offerings of Babe Ruth out there. This is the card to get start off with. If you want to kick off with vintage, this is a good one to start off with. It's beautiful. It can be a centerpiece, and you can tell everybody, hey, guess what? I've got a Babe Ruth. I've got a real Babe Ruth. What a neat thing, though. So I would recommend this. I would recommend getting into vintage for anybody, though. I mean, I think this is just it's a great pool of stuff in the hobby. I mean, it's really neat. So, anyways, we'll keep up with Babe Ruth because I got the 1933 Gaudy. This is probably the most famous card of his ever. So you take the thing that appeals to me is that this card is the most famous card of the most famous player in baseball. Not the most expensive, but the most famous. Everybody knows this one. Gaudy had, I think, 4 different poses of this. 3 of them were close-ups. 2 or 3 of them were close-ups but had different colors in the background, and one of them didn't have a bat at all, but the other 3 did. This is the only one of the full-body version of them. You can't tell, but this has like a little bit of a crease down here, but it presents beautifully. It's a gorgeous card. Very nice. Again, it's just, to me, it's museum worthy. I mean, it's really cool. I mean, they're not rare. I mean, you can, if you hang out on eBay for several months, one will pop up, no doubt. I mean, everybody wants them. So his teammate, Lou Gehrig, this is a 1934 Gaudy, and I have always wanted this card, just like that Babe Ruth. This one especially because, and Gehrig has a couple of them, but this is my favorite Lou Gehrig card by far because it's got his smiling face. This is how I think of Lou Gehrig whenever I think of him. Just a smiling, nice guy, a gentle guy. And the cool thing is it's got the Lou Gehrig says. If you remember a few years ago, I created a few customs that where it said Tanner says, and I had my face right there, and something that says Tanner Says. Well, this is the genuine article. This is where it came from. So it's really cool. I love that. The last Gaudi I have is a 1938 Gaudi Heads Up Joe DiMaggio, Joltin' Joe DiMaggio. There are a couple of versions of this card. One of them that doesn't have all the comic stuff in the background, and the one that does. I almost pulled a trigger accidentally on one that didn't have the comic stuff in the background. I would have been bummed, because this is the one I was really looking for. I love this card. I remember this card as a kid. I mean, not that as a kid when when it came out. When I was your age, back in the 30s, not. But I remember in the 80s. I remember this was a big deal just because it was on the thick price guide books and the magazine covers and everything. It's Joe DiMaggio. I mean, it's baseball royalty again. So, last but not least, there's the last pile here. I'll quickly go through these. Again, baseball royalty through and through. These two here I'll show at the same time. 1953 Topps, Jackie Robinson and Satchel Paige. I always thought that the Satchel Paige would have like UFOs in the background or something. So, but it's a gorgeous portrait of card. Same with Jackie Robinson. It's got the Brooklyn Bridge in the background, and it's really cool because I never noticed that before. So those are outstanding cards. We also have the 1955 Topps Roberto Clemente, rookie. 1954 Topps Hank Aaron, rookie. 1949 Bowman Satchel Paige, rookie. 1951 Bowman Willie Mays, rookie, which, by the way, on a lot of baseball's top player lists, if Babe Ruth isn't number one, Willie Mays is going to be the guy that's number one. 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson, rookie. And this is pretty significant because obviously, I mean, this is the 100-year anniversary of his birthday. So really, really cool card. And last but not least, this is the one that every kid kind of drools over and has wanted forever. The 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle. It's authentic altered. It's got a little ink blotch. Thankfully it's blue, so it doesn't stick out terribly like a green or red would or whatever, but it's got a wrinkle that goes straight down the middle. But beautiful card. It's decently centered. I wanted to get one of these forever. I wanted to make sure that I got one that was presentable, so you can, in other words, you can see it here and you can recognize the photo, and it's nice. It's a nice clear photo and everything, and yeah, super happy I got this. So and that's it, guys. We are at the end of my little year-long expedition into vintage cards that was mainly fueled by the money I got from my Jose Canseco baseball card super collection. So thanks for hanging with me. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope you'll have a great day. Bye, and thanks for watching my daddy's baseball card collection video. Whew, we're gonna change your diaper, boy.